This is a little video in looking at how I organize my collections and through my collections, my folders in Lightroom. This isn't really a video though about um, how folders work or how your catalog works or how collections are are done. And it's really just a show of how I can organize myself so I can see the photos I want to see when I want to see them and to not see the photos I don't want to see when I don't want to see them. So uh, I guess everybody has photos that are in their house that are in photo albums, like the old-fashioned photo albums. And we also probably have a whole bunch of other pictures like our they come out of our camera from where we go on a shoot. You're going to shoot a bunch of flowers in the forest or in your yard or something, and you don't want to see those photos alongside your photos of your aunt Hilda. And also you want your photos organized by stars or some other means, but this is a way of kind of just organizing it so that things just show up where you want them to. Another problem that can happen is that lots of people shoot lots of photos, and so they may have trouble kind of they don't want to see all those other versions of that photo next to the one they want to show somebody else. Yet they don't want to delete those versions in case they want to use them at another time. Um, and they're not really what do you star those? It's a similar photograph, but it hasn't been processed, right? In Lightroom or in Photoshop, and yet it's not really a 5 star because you didn't do anything with it, but you did something with that one of those photos. So I'm going to try to show you how you can take care of those situations. First of all, let's just look quickly at the folder panel and how I organize that. So many years ago, I started just by separating the photos that I take that I consider my more creative photos from those that are more to do with my daily life. So I created a folder, and remember, all these folders in here are reflected exactly in the Finder as they are. So in Lightroom, you must make all your changes within the folder panel, otherwise you'll be in big trouble because you can't do it the other way around. You can't organize them in the Finder and expect it to show up in here. Okay, having said that, my first area that I organized things into were photo albums, so the pictures of Aunt Hilda, etc. Now, the subfolders under that can be anything you want, but I create a hierarchy that starts with family, friends, home trips, and weddings, etc. And that will take a lot of photos out of this next category, which is my Blu-rays. And my Blu-rays are all the photos I take that I consider to be in some extent to some extent creative as opposed to regular daily life. Um, and I'll have a quick explanation as to why they're called Blu-rays here. You notice I have 11 Blu-rays. And what that means is that in my creative photos, I have 5,042 photos. Um, and they are all the ones I like the most, from 5 to 1 star. And what I do is I put them on a Blu-ray. So there's 11 Blu-rays, and they're in my bank vault. And the reason I do that is because the evidence out there is that uh, the best means to store and archive your photos over a long period of time is through optical disc. And nowadays we have M discs, which can last 1,000 years, and you can look on site and see why. And there are some Blu-rays that will repeatedly last 100 years. I'm not here to make an argument about whether that's good or bad or anything. That's just the way I do it. Um, and the reason I do that is because I'm not fond in having swapping, uh, you know, keeping track of swapping hard drives and stuff all of the time. And it's also a reflection of how I organize my photos, because the only photos that are in the bank are the Blu-rays, and they're not my family photos. They're on another hard drive. So you see, I actually value these a little bit more in that they have a third reiteration of protection. And then of course these photos are also on my internal hard drive in my computer and on an external hard drive as well. So that's what Blu-rays are. So we've got photo albums, Blu-rays, and then the rest of these are everything that do not belong on Blu-rays and also do not belong in photo albums. So they're business cards and templates and photos I put on my website and home projects and various things from courses I've taken and etc. So that's how the folders are kind of organized. Now, the way these relate to my collections is very important because if you look at my collections, I've created a collection set called Star Rating, and under that I put several smart collections from 5 stars to 0 stars. And these have to have rules. That's why they're so good. But from the 5 stars to the 1 star, there's only one rule. If we edit this one here, this smart collection, you'll see that the only rule is it has to be 5 stars. So that's pretty simple. The only thing that goes in here is anything that has 5 stars, right down to 1 star. The only thing that goes into the 1 star smart collection are photos that are labeled 1 star. Now the 0 stars. Now you can call this anything you want, right? You can leave it 5 A B C D or whatever. But this is how I'm doing it. So we have stars, 0 stars, and 0 stars has 3 rules instead of 1 rule. So the 0 stars, it has to be less than 1, and otherwise it has to be 0. It can't contain a certain keyword, and in this case the keyword is 1.photo albums. I'll show you what that means in a minute. And the last one is that the color label for that particular photo preview cannot be red. So that's fairly simple. That's what we're and I label it DNGs and JPEGs from photo stacks, etc. It's just all kinds of photos that end up there that happen to be 0. Now, if we want to think about this, we have to think about it in terms of inclusion and exclusion. So we're excluding from 0 stars photo albums, and the way we do that is we give every photo in this folder, which includes all these other folders here, a keyword which is #1 photo albums. And the reason I make it 1.photo albums is that puts the keyword is the first keyword you will see in every one of these photos. So it's not easy to miss. So that excludes all of those photos from the 0s, even though they are 0s. The next one is all of these cards down here, all these ones down here that do not belong in Blu-rays or in 0s. And the way we do that is we just label all of them red. So if you were to look at all these photos, whether it's templates or whether it's web photos, they're all red. That excludes everything from all of these photos and all these folders from the 0s. So the only thing that's in the 0s are 0s that come out of my Blu-rays folder, or in other words, all of the pictures I take that are my creative photos. And it's simple as that. You can have all kinds of reasons why you make something a 0 or why you don't want to see a photo. The only way that you're going to not see a photo in 5 stars that you don't want to see in 5 stars is to make it either a different star because it's not a 5-star anymore. Really, you think it probably is really a 4. That's one way. But the other way is you make it a 0, and then it doesn't show up in any of the stars from 1 to 5. And the purpose of that is so that if you're showing your photos to somebody else, they don't have to look through all the other stuff that goes along with these photos. And an example of that, of course, is if you're out in the forest and you take, you know, I don't know, 30 photos of a flower, and you bring it all into Lightroom and you adjust one of them, and you think that's pretty good, but you don't want to toss the rest. Even though you looked at them all, but you think, well, I might want to keep those. So you might say, okay, this one that I just adjusted, it looks like it's probably worth a 3. So you can give it a 3 and it will show up in the 3 stars. But all of the others that you didn't will show up in 0. And that's a good thing, and I'll show you why. It's because, let's say, for example, let me try to find a photo here that I can. Here's a good example. This car here. Let's say this car is one of several cars, and in fact it is several photos of cars that I took at one time. And this one, it was a 5, and I don't want all the rest of them to show up in 5. One way of doing that is by making them closer to the value they should be. Maybe the rest of them are 3s or 2s or 1s. But if I don't want, and so they won't show up here. And so if they were all 0s, then they would be, the 5-star would be here, and the 0s would be in the 0 category. So it really doesn't matter that there's 0s, because you won't lose them, and I'll show you why. It's because if I right click on this photo here and go to the folder in the library, there's all the photos that are not 5s. And they could be 0s, but it doesn't matter, because the real purpose of this is making sure that photos stay where they live. This photo lives in this folder, 2009 vehicles, within Blu-ray number 1. And that way you never lose your photos. You never, no matter what you do, you won't do, as long as you follow some of the things I talk about in a following video on my workflow, in terms of culling images, etc. We can make all these 0s, and they'll, for example, all these 3s here, I can make them all 0s. For example, let's just make them 0s. There they are. And when we go to the 5-star, and that's when we want to show up in 5-star. There it is. And then I want to go back to, I don't know where those other photos are, those 0s. I know they're in 0s, but where are they? I can't find them. Oh, they just happen to be there because there's another photo that's a 0 that's similar to the one that I just showed you. So here's all of the 0s. But that car is not in the 0s, the one that was the 5. And we no longer can find it because it wasn't selected. And we can't select it from the 0s. There it is. It just happens to be close by. So again, if we go back and look to the folder in the library, there's all the cars. This one, and this one, if you notice, because it's stacked, the DNG is a 0, and I often make it, because this is an unadjusted DNG, and that's another. So you can dream of all kinds of reasons why you want these to end up in 0. This is one of them. Is that I did all my adjustments in Photoshop for this photo. So the DNG is a 0. Another situation like that is if you have a whole bunch of pictures that are part of a panorama, but you don't feel like deleting them. And I've had that happen. Years later, I'm glad I didn't delete those photos, because I know more now than I did then about panoramas and making adjustments, etc. So if you're going to err on the side of caution, you keep all your panoramas, but you don't want them to show up in your, maybe it's a panorama has a star of 1. And then the others are 0s, where you just right click on the one that's 1 and go to the folder in the library, and there's all your photos that you took with that panorama alongside of your panorama. So it's just a way of keeping organized. Now I'm going to make all these ones here what they were before, which were 3s, I believe. And notice they are still in their folder, and if I click on them now and I go to the 3s, boom, there they are. And that's how, and there's the other ones that were also labeled 3. So that's how I organize my photos in Lightroom, between the folder library, or sorry, panel, and let's just pick those up, and my collections panel. And I'm going to do a further one again, like I said, on how I cull my photos, because what can also happen, you see, is that you if you don't follow the workflow that I'm going to suggest, you're going to end up with a lot of zeros. Like if you don't delete photos that you can't sort of just get rid of, you can't figure out how to take the best one out of the five, and you make one of them a 2-star, let's say. Well, that's a lot of space, that's a lot of photos. But the good news is that when you use this sort of system, you can go back to the 0 stars, and you know that all of these 0 stars are only pictures that are in your Blu-rays. And so you can start to whittle them down again. You can look at those 5 flowers that are zeros, and you can say, I've given it enough time, and I know I can delete 3 of these, and I'm going to make this other one a 2 as well. And now it sits beside that other one that's a 2, and now you've reduced the amount that you've had of data that you're saving on your drive, and you never have to throw anything out. And that's what most people worry about is, I don't want to get rid of anything, but I want to find my pictures, and keywording and metadata is just not helping me enough, or my file structure. And this is just another piece that goes on top that's fairly simple with a few rules that allows you to make sure that you keep all of your photos in their stars, so that you can view them easily, but you're not throwing anything out, because everything else is in 0. Hope that makes sense, and thank you for listening.